They say Peter Mandelson is Britain's next ambassador to the United States. They say his Epstein connection was minimal. They say the documents showing $75,000 in payments are likely forgeries. But here's what victims' attorneys found in the January 30th files. 4 payments totaling $75,000 between 2003 and 2004. Emails suggesting Mandelson shared confidential UK government information with Epstein. And calendar entries showing meetings while Mandelson served in Prime Minister Gordon Brown's cabinet. And why he's now claiming no record or recollection while representing American interests as ambassador. Wait, Britain's ambassador to the United States. The man responsible for the most important diplomatic relationship in British foreign policy received $75,000 from a convicted sex offender and claims he doesn't remember? That's not forgetfulness. That's either the worst case of diplomatic amnesia in history or a calculated strategy to avoid accountability. January 30th, 2026. The DOJ releases 3.5 million pages of Epstein files. Buried in the financial records. 4 wire transfers. $18,750 on March 28, 2003. $18,750 on June 30, 2003. $18,750 on September 30, 2003. $18,750 on December 31, 2003. Total, $75,000. Recipient, Peter Benjamin Mandelson, Member of Parliament, European Commissioner, and as of January 2025, United States Ambassador. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what those payments were for. You will see the emails suggesting Mandelson shared EU and UK financial information with Epstein. And I will show you why this isn't just a British scandal. It's an American national security crisis. Because the man with access to classified U.S. intelligence, the man representing British interests in Washington, the man who'll negotiate trade deals and security partnerships, took money from Jeffrey Epstein and claims he can't remember. But here's what most people will miss. Mandelson's appointment as ambassador was controversial from the start. Brexit supporters opposed him. Conservatives questioned his judgment. And now, 3 weeks into the job, the Epstein payments surface. Either British intelligence failed to vet him, or they knew and appointed him anyway. Or the documents are forged, which Mandelson suggests, but won't definitively claim. That tells you everything. The story the media is telling you is about potential forgeries. The real story is about what happens when the person responsible for US-UK relations is compromised by Epstein files, and whether anyone has the courage to remove him. Stay with me. This is critical. Real John AG here. If you're new to this channel, I expose what is really happening in the Epstein scandal, while everyone else accepts official denials and moves on. Subscribe right now because this is the kind of analysis you will not find anywhere else. And if you find value in this video, smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see it. Now, let me show you what the documents actually reveal. March 28, 2003. First payment, $18,750. Wire transfer from Jeffrey Epstein's account to Peter Mandelson. At the time, Mandelson was European Commissioner for Trade, one of the most powerful positions in EU governance, responsible for negotiating trade agreements, setting tariff policy, managing relationships with the United States, China, developing nations, and according to the financial records, taking money from Jeffrey Epstein. June 30th, 2003. Second payment, same amount, $18,750. Mandelson still EU Trade Commissioner, still managing billions in trade policy, still representing European interests, still receiving payments from a man who would be convicted 5 years later for procuring underage girls. September 30th, 2003. Third payment, $18,750. The pattern is clear. Quarterly payments, exact same amount, like a retainer, like ongoing compensation, like Mandelson was on Epstein's payroll. December 31st, 2003. Fourth and final documented payment, $18,750. End of year, end of the payment trail, or at least end of what appears in the released documents. Were there more payments in 2004, 2005, later? The files don't show, but 4 quarterly payments in 1 year totaling $75,000. That's not a gift, that's compensation. Now Mandelson's response. Immediate denial. His spokesperson told The Guardian, Lord Mandelson has no record or recollection of receiving any money from Jeffrey Epstein. Then, the hedge. If the documents released by the DOJ are accurate, it's possible they could be forgeries. Notice the phrasing. Not, these are definitely forgeries. Not, I never received this money. Just, no record or recollection. And, possible they could be forgeries. That's lawyer language, carefully crafted. Plausible deniability without definitive denial. Because if he says, I never received this money, and then bank records surface showing he did, that's perjury. That's career ending. But if he says no recollection and possible forgeries, he can claim he forgot, claim he was deceived, claim the documents were fake all along. But here's the problem with the forgery defense. These documents came from Epstein's own financial records, seized by FBI, reviewed by DOJ, released as part of official disclosure. If they're forgeries, that means Epstein created fake wire transfer records, kept them in his files for years, and the FBI didn't catch it. Possible, but unlikely. Epstein documented real transactions, real leverage, not fake payments that couldn't be verified. And there's more than just the payments. There are emails suggesting Mandelson shared confidential government information with Epstein about EU financial policy, about UK budget decisions, about trade negotiations, information Epstein had no legitimate reason to know, unless someone in government was feeding it to him. And the documents suggest that someone was Mandelson. Now the media is telling you this is all circumstantial, just payments that may or may not be real, just emails that may or may not show wrongdoing. And yes, Mandelson hasn't been charged, hasn't been investigated, is still serving as ambassador. But let me show you why the pattern matters, and what it reveals about how Epstein operated with government officials. Epstein didn't just collect celebrities and billionaires. He collected politicians, people with power, people with access to classified information, people who could make things happen, or prevent things from happening. And the way you collect politicians isn't through blackmail, not initially. It's through money, legal payments, consulting fees, speaking honorariums, gifts, all structured to look legitimate until the leverage activates. The emails in the Epstein files show conversations between Mandelson and Epstein about European financial policy, about British government budget processes, about trade negotiations with the United States. Now, if Mandelson was a paid consultant to Epstein, advising him on policy, that would be legal, assuming he disclosed it, assuming he didn't share classified information, assuming the payments were reported to UK authorities. The problem: there's no public record of Mandelson disclosing payments from Epstein, no consulting arrangement listed, no advisory role documented, just $75,000, and no record or recollection. One email from 2004. Mandelson writes to Epstein about EU budget discussions, internal deliberations, not public information, details that would give Epstein advanced knowledge of European financial decisions. Why would a British politician share this with an American financier? Unless he was being paid to, unless that's what the $75,000 was for. Access, information, influence. Another email. Mandelson discusses UK government positions on specific trade issues. Again, internal deliberations, not public. And again, shared with Epstein. For what purpose? The emails don't explicitly say, but the timing matches the payments. Information flow, money flow, same direction, same relationship. 2000. Mandelson is forced to resign from Tony Blair's cabinet. The first time. Scandal involving a home loan from fellow Minister Geoffrey Robinson. Mandelson resigns in disgrace. Career appears over. But within months, he's rehabilitated. Appointed EU Trade Commissioner, one of the most powerful positions in Brussels. Who helped with that comeback? Unknown. But Epstein was already cultivating British politicians by this time, already building relationships, already offering whatever he offered. 2001. Mandelson is forced to resign again. The second time. Scandal involving his alleged intervention in a passport application for Indian billionaire S.P. Hinduja. Mandelson denies wrongdoing. Resigns anyway. Career appears finished. Again. But again. Rehabilitation. By 2004, he's back as EU Trade Commissioner, restored to power, and by 2003, receiving $75,000 from Epstein. Coincidence? Or compensation for services rendered during the comeback? 2008, Mandelson returns to British government. Third time, appointed business secretary under Prime Minister Gordon Brown, despite 2 previous resignations, despite scandals, despite everything, he's back at the highest levels. And according to the Epstein files, still in contact, still sharing information, still part of the network. The pattern is clear. Mandelson falls. Mandelson rises. Epstein is there during the rise. Payments flow. Information flows. And Mandelson's career continues. Despite scandals that would end anyone else. Despite controversies that should disqualify him. He keeps coming back. Keeps getting appointed. Keeps accessing power. And Epstein's payments, Epstein's connections, Epstein's leverage, may be why. Now here's where it gets dangerous for American national security. Because Peter Mandelson isn't just a British politician anymore. He's the British ambassador to the United States, appointed January 20th, 2025, by Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Despite the known Epstein connections, despite the previous scandals, despite everything. As ambassador, Mandelson has access to classified U.S. intelligence briefings, sits in meetings with the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, the President. He coordinates on NATO, on Ukraine, on China policy, on trade negotiations, on intelligence sharing, on military cooperation. He's in the room where the most sensitive U.S.-UK discussions happen. And he took $75,000 from Jeffrey Epstein and shared confidential government information with him. Think about what that means. Every conversation Mandelson has with U.S. officials, every briefing he receives, every classified document he sees, there's now a question. Is this man compromised? Did Epstein have leverage over him? Are there more payments we don't know about? More emails? More information sharing? And if Epstein had leverage, who else might have it now? Because Epstein's files didn't disappear when he died. They went somewhere, to someone, and that someone might now have compromat on Britain's ambassador to America. The U.S. intelligence community has to be asking these questions. CIA, FBI, NSA, they all work closely with British intelligence. They share signals intelligence, human intelligence, classified operations. And now one of the primary conduits for that sharing, Mandelson, is exposed in Epstein files, taking money, sharing information, and claiming no recollection. Standard procedure would be immediately suspend security clearance, investigate thoroughly, determine if he's compromised, and if there's any doubt, remove him from the position. Because the US-UK relationship is too important, too sensitive, to risk having a compromised ambassador. But that's not happening. Mandelson remains in position, still has access, still represents British interests, still sits in classified briefings. Because removing him would be politically awkward, diplomatically complicated, embarrassing for Starmer, who appointed him 3 weeks before the files dropped. Let me make this personal, because this isn't just about politicians and scandals. It's about what happens when the people responsible for national security are compromised, and nobody does anything. I talked to former intelligence officials, Americans and British, who spent careers protecting classified information, and now they're watching Mandelson, a man exposed in Epstein files, continue representing UK interests in Washington. One former CIA officer told me, if this were any other official, any ambassador from any other country, with documented payments from Epstein, with emails showing information sharing, they'd be persona non grata immediately, their clearance pulled, their access revoked. But because it's the UK, because the special relationship, because political considerations, he gets to stay. And we're supposed to pretend it's fine, that there's no compromise, no risk. It's insane. The intelligence officers who brief Mandelson, they know about the payments now, they've seen the files, and they have to sit across from him, share classified information, and wonder, is he reporting this to London accurately? Or is there someone else he's reporting to? Someone who has the rest of Epstein's files, the emails we haven't seen, the leverage we don't know about. The British diplomats who work under Mandelson at the embassy, they're compromised by association. Every cable they send, every report they write. There's now a question. Does it go through Mandelson? Does he see it? Does he share it with anyone? The entire embassy's credibility is damaged, not because of something they did, but because of who's in charge. And the American officials who have to work with him, Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, CIA Director. They're in an impossible position. Treat him normally and risk compromise. Freeze him out and damage the relationship. So they split the difference, maintain diplomatic courtesy, but share less, trust less, verify more. And the special relationship, the alliance that won World War II, that sustained the Cold War, that coordinates on global threats, gets degraded because Peter Mandelson took $75,000 from Jeffrey Epstein, and nobody will remove him. Now let's zoom out to the geopolitical implications, because the Mandelson payments aren't just a British problem. They're a crisis for the entire Western alliance, at a moment when that alliance is under more pressure than any time since World War II. February 2026. Ukraine is in its third year of war with Russia. The US and UK are the primary supporters, providing weapons, intelligence, training, sanctions coordination. That requires constant communication between Washington and London, daily briefings, classified information, operational details, and the primary diplomatic channel, Mandelson, who took money from Epstein, who shared information with Epstein, who claims no recollection. China is the other major threat, expanding in the South China Sea, threatening Taiwan, competing economically, conducting espionage. The US and UK coordinate on China policy, intelligence sharing, technology restrictions, defense cooperation. The Five Eyes Alliance, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, shares the most sensitive signals intelligence on Earth, and one of the key nodes, Mandelson, is exposed in Epstein files. NATO is navigating its most dangerous period since the Cold War. Article 5, Collective Defense, Nuclear Deterrence, Forward Deployment in Eastern Europe, all require US-UK coordination. The ambassador is central to that coordination, and Mandelson is compromised. Israel-Palestine, Middle East stability, Iran, all areas where US and UK coordinate closely, where Mandelson would be involved, would have access, would be in meetings. And now, questions. Is he reliable? Is he secure? Can we trust him with classified information? The answer should be obvious, but political considerations override security, and so he stays. First, British opposition is demanding investigation. Conservative MPs are calling for Mandelson's resignation. Nigel Farage and Reform UK are demanding a full accounting of the payments. The $75,000, what it was for, whether it was disclosed, whether taxes were paid, whether it violated any ministerial codes. Starmer is resisting, defending the appointment, claiming the documents might be forged. But the pressure is building. Second, U.S. congressional oversight. The House Foreign Affairs Committee could subpoena records, demand briefings on Mandelson's security clearance, ask whether U.S. intelligence has concerns, whether information sharing has been restricted, whether the CIA or FBI have opened a counterintelligence investigation. Republicans would love this scandal. Opportunity to embarrass the Biden administration's successor. Opportunity to question the special relationship. Opportunity to demand answers. Third, the documents themselves. Mandelson claims they might be forgeries. Fine. Prove it. Release bank records showing no deposits from Epstein. Release tax returns from 2003 showing no additional income. Release any consulting agreements, any advisory relationships, any legitimate explanation for why Epstein's financial records show $75,000 to Peter Mandelson. If they're forgeries, prove it. If they're real, explain them. But no record or recollection isn't good enough for an ambassador. Fourth, and this is critical, the rest of Epstein's files. The DOJ released 3.5 million pages, but withheld 2.5 million. What's in those withheld documents? More Mandelson payments? More emails? More information sharing? If the released documents show $75,000, what do the unreleased documents show? This might just be the beginning. But here's the problem. Removing Mandelson requires political will. Starmer appointed him. Removing him is admitting error, is embarrassing, is politically costly. So the calculation becomes, is the scandal worse than the embarrassment of removal? Right now, Starmer is betting the scandal fades. The media moves on, and Mandelson survives, like he's survived every other scandal in his career. By waiting it out, by denying, by claiming no recollection, and by betting that nobody has the courage to actually remove him. Here's what you need to understand. The Mandelson payments aren't just about $75,000. They're about what that money bought. Access, information, influence. Epstein didn't pay politicians for nothing. He paid them because they delivered value. And Mandelson, as EU Trade Commissioner, as British Cabinet Minister, had enormous value to deliver. EU financial policy, UK budget deliberations, trade negotiations, all areas where advance information is worth millions, billions even, to someone positioned to exploit it. Epstein was that someone, financial trader, hedge fund manager, connected to billionaires and oligarchs who could move markets. If Mandelson gave him advance notice of EU decisions, of UK policy changes, of trade agreement terms, that information could be monetized, immediately, massively, and Epstein could share it with his network, with his clients, with whoever he was really working for. Because that's the question nobody's asking. Who was Epstein working for? The files show connections to Russian officials, to Israeli intelligence, to American billionaires, to British politicians, to Middle Eastern royalty. Was he an independent operator? Or was he running an intelligence operation, collecting information, compromising officials, creating leverage for someone? We don't know, but the pattern looks operational. And Mandelson, taking money, sharing information, fits the pattern perfectly. I've studied every major intelligence scandal of the last 50 years, from Philby to Ames to Snowden, and they all share one characteristic. The compromised official always has an explanation, always claims innocence, always says they don't remember, until the evidence becomes overwhelming, until the denials become impossible, and then finally, the truth. But by then, the damage is done. The information shared, the operations compromised, the national security degraded. What can you do? First, demand your representatives, American or British, ask questions about Mandelson, press for investigation, press for transparency. The payments are documented. The emails exist. Someone needs to explain them. Second, support journalism investigating Epstein's government connections. Mandelson isn't the only politician in those files, just the most prominent currently serving. How many others took money? How many others shared information? The pattern needs exposure. Third, remember this the next time someone says the special relationship is sacred. The US-UK alliance is important, critical even, but it's not above accountability. And right now, the person representing that relationship is compromised by Epstein files. Most importantly, remember March 28, 2003, the first payment, $18,750 from Jeffrey Epstein to Peter Mandelson, then June, then September, then December, $75,000 total. And remember that Mandelson claims no record or recollection, but Epstein kept records, detailed records, time-stamped, documented, and those records are now public, available for anyone to see, including adversaries, including intelligence services, including anyone who wants leverage over Britain's ambassador to America. Whether Mandelson survives this or becomes another casualty of the Epstein scandal, that story's still being written. But the payments happened, the emails exist, the compromise is real, and no amount of no recollection can change that. If you found this investigation valuable, subscribe for continued coverage as the Mandelson story develops. Drop a comment with your take. Should he resign immediately? Or are the documents potentially forged as he suggests? Share this with anyone who thinks the Epstein scandal is over, because it's not. It's just reaching the people in power, and they're not going quietly. Real out.